even in hardship, you can still homeschool your kids. And you might need to pull in other people. I've had other people help teach my kids, and that's okay too. The community will step in. You will find people, maybe they have nothing to do with the homeschooling community, but they love Latin. So they're going to step in and be a Latin teacher because they taught at the private school down the street. Or maybe you're going to have the retired orthopedic surgeon who's going to step in and teach science. There are other means to school your kids even in the middle of hardship.
Welcome to Homeschool Talks, a podcast by HSLDA. This is a show about all things homeschooling, from practical tips to inspiring stories and everything in between. You can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes, as well as upcoming guests and topics, sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we hope you enjoyed the program. Here's your host, Jim Mason.
Welcome to Homeschool Talks. I am Natalie Mack, Military Outreach Coordinator for HSLDA. I'm a retired Navy chaplain spouse and a 23-year veteran military homeschooler of 5 high school to college graduates. Today, I am joined by Nicole Kardoes, a fellow mill homeschool mom of 6 and recipient of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation's Gold Star Family Home Program. Nicole's late husband, Lieutenant Colonel retired Michael John Kardoes, proudly served in the United States Air Force. Nicole, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story.
Thank you very much.
So we'll get started. We want to know a little bit about your husband, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Kardoes. Can you share with us, please?
Sure. So Mike graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1994. Mike and I grew up together, actually. So I don't remember ever not knowing him. We grew up in the same church, same elementary school. People assumed that we were high school sweethearts. We were not, although he was the first boy who kissed me in junior high. And we went on a date after he graduated from the academy, and we got married that December. So December of 94. He always wanted to be a helicopter pilot, was able to get a helicopter slot out of pilot training. And we spent the next 23 years as a typical military family with a military pilot as my husband. We moved a lot. He did a lot of trainings, deployed twice, volunteered to deploy both times. We have 3 biological children. We have 3 internationally adopted children from Latvia. And Mike retired in 2017. We moved to Montana and thought that we had survived deployments and all sorts of things. And Mike died in 2022, ultimately from burn pit exposure.
Yes. Wow. When we go back a little bit, you talked about how long you had known Mike. And although you said you weren't high school sweethearts, it sounds like you were pretty close there. And my husband and I were high school sweethearts as well, from the same area. And so that was something that really stood out with what you just said. And sounds like Air Force Academy, so the Springs, right, as they call it,
Yes.
Colorado Springs
Yep.
in Colorado. So yeah, I've been honored to travel there 3 times in the past 2 years. Never had traveled to Colorado before, but somehow in the past 3 years, 3 times, past 2 years. So it's been interesting supporting the Colorado Christian home educators.
Yes.
So wow. So military life and helicopter pilot, and that sounds like a lot of, odd hours and just a lot of hard work, right? And military life already has its challenges. And I know that with my husband having been a Navy chaplain, we've been around the block, as they say, quite a bit with the military lifestyle. And so, what was that like with him being a helicopter pilot? And I know that sounds like something he had great joy in and pride in, and he volunteered to serve. I heard you said 2 times in combat. So, yeah, what was that like for him and for you?
So Mike loved his job, absolutely loved his job, and he always said he got to do some of the coolest things, did search and rescue missions in the mountains, um, was able to fly vice presidents, but it was pretty hard on our family life sometimes depending on the assignments. Some assignments he was home a little bit more, but there was one assignment in particular that, not including his deployment, we figured it out at the end of 3 years, and he had been gone over 15 days a month is what we averaged. So, I was essentially a single mom. He would come in, he would leave. He was always very present when he was home and very helpful and a great dad, great husband, loved the kids to pieces. But there were times when we didn't see each other a lot. We had to make sure we were on the same page. He often said, "I'm on your side. No matter what was going on, honey, I'm on your side." So you learn very young. We were married young, we were both 22, that we had to work together. Otherwise, it was gonna be too hard, actually. So, um, yeah, busy and a lot of moves. I think we lived in 19 houses the last time I counted. My older kids are definitely what they call the military brats. They lived the life. So, the younger kids, not so much. We adopted our 3 kids in 2015, after his last deployment, and he was getting ready to retire. So, they're not quite the same, they don't look at it quite the same. But, yeah, but military life is busy, but it's also where we made some of the best friends, right? You're not close to family, so your friends become your family.
Your friends become, yeah, community becomes really, really important. It really does. And so, the children, they talk about our military children being like dandelions, really resilient. And, we live the hard life, right? Or we've lived it, the hard life. And we see their struggle sometime to adapt new locations and finding new community, and in this case, new homeschool community potentially. And so we know that many times the kids struggle a little bit. And when you have a spouse with a pretty irregular schedule, a hard, intensive schedule, as a military spouse, you're filling in quite a bit. You're being both parents frequently. And so it sounds like your husband realized that, and he said he was on your side. And that's what that sound like, is that I'm not able to be here, or he wasn't able to be there as often as his heart wanted, but he was there when he could be, and he was fully there. And that's the best of military life, when that works that way. So what a blessing. And so homeschooling, how did you choose homeschooling? Tell us about that journey. Everyone wants to know, how do people start homeschooling? So, and why would you choose that? You hear that all the time, right?
So, we actually were the accidental homeschoolers. Um, so my oldest son has a July birthday, and we knew that we didn't want to send him to school right after he turned 5. So we made the decision the year he turned 5 that we were going to, and I put this in mom air quotes, homeschool for kindergarten. And then we would wait a year and we would send him to regular kindergarten. That's what we had decided. So that's how we started. And then, welcome to the Air Force, we got orders. So we did that for a year. We PCSed. We were getting ready to enroll him in kindergarten. And Mike called me one day and said, "You're never going to believe this. Don't unpack all the boxes. We have orders." I'm like, "We have not unpacked yet."
Right, right. We just got here, it sounds like.
And he said, "Yeah, I just got picked up for school. We are leaving in less than 10 months." Okay. So we decided, I guess we'll actually homeschool for kindergarten.
Right.
So that was year 2. We moved to Dayton, Ohio, and we knew we were only gonna be there for 13 months. So child number 2 also had a July birthday, so she's now 5. So we homeschool year 3 with 2 kids. And then we realized that Mike had to do follow-up training, so I actually moved in with his parents for about 4 to 5 months and just kept homeschooling. So anyway, to make a really long story short, Ryan's first 4 years in school would have been in different schools across the country. It's not like we moved houses, we actually PCS'd. So his first 4 years in school would have been in different schools, and by then, we realized this is actually working. Our second daughter, needed special help. She was in some private therapy, and if she had been in school, that would have been much more difficult to navigate. So here we are. I've been homeschooling for over 20 years. Um, we really were the accidental homeschoolers who realized that we could give our kids a better education than what we got. We could keep our family intact, especially with Mike's schedule. If he was pulling alert, but he was home on a Tuesday, that became our Saturday. And if he was holding alert on a Saturday, we just did school those days. And this became even more clear after 9/11, and just his ops tempo was so different that we could just adjust to his schedule.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I understand totally with that. Yeah. I mean, we know there are military families that pretty much I call homestead, right? Either because the particular MOS or military occupational specialty that they are in, or we have the EFMP Category 5s who pretty much homestead. But in general, most families are going every 2 or 3 years. And so I'm sure our listeners that are within the military homeschool environment are saying, oh, I identify with that. Getting orders and the boxes are still, saying, you're going to be leaving in 10 months and you have the boxes there. We used to have the pizza parties. Like that's all we could just order the pizza in and we try to get more boxes unpacked, or you use the boxes as the tables, right? And
Right,
this is all you
right.
have, right? Because your furniture had to come. And so we've all kind of like experienced that. But homeschooling, that flexibility as well as the stability, that in a military life, it's golden. It's everything to be able to pause and speed up and just have that, like we said, the flexibility to be able to do that. Typically, the service members' schedules are so intense and vary quite a bit that I hear what you were saying is that if you could, you would homeschool on the weekend or in the evening or whatever you needed to do to make time together as a family the priority.
Exactly, exactly, and again, it depended on the assignment, it depended on Mike's job, but it also gave him the ability to be more involved. So when the kids hit a certain spot in math and mom was over it,
The dreaded math.
yes, and mom was just over it, I could teach it, but I chose not to teach it. Then dad could come home and he could sit at the kitchen table and be involved with the kids, and it didn't matter if he was coming off alert at night, so it was 8 o'clock, or if he was coming off alert in the morning and it was 8 a.m., then he could still be involved.
Exactly. He could still be involved. So, where are some of the assignments that you all had? Some of the duty stations as a military family homeschooling?
Yeah, so we were stationed in the DC metro area actually 3 times. We were in Cheyenne, Wyoming twice, we were in Dayton, Ohio, at Malmstrom
Mhm.
in Montana.
Mhm.
Where else have we lived? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. But if Oh, Minot, North Dakota. So, yeah, we've lived in a lot of different places. Because he was a Huey pilot, they were primarily in the missile field or in DC, and with some brief assignments other places for school.
Got you. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, as a military homeschooling family, like we've been talking about, um, homeschooling gives you, or I'm assuming, based on our experience as well, is um, those connections between other families who are homeschooling, particularly on an installation, and you find such an amazing community, like of fellow people living the same life. So they're not just homeschooling, you have that in common, but they also have the context of military life. And I think that that makes such a difference. At least it has for our family. What are your thoughts about that? How did that help um, homeschooling within the military and having community?
Oh, I definitely think that's a big deal because especially when we lived on base, the kids would find those other homeschooling families because we were done with school at 11:30 or at 2, and so they wanna go outside and find friends, and that is not unique to our family, that you don't have wasted time during the day to line up or to go out for lunch, to the cafeteria, you can just do it all at the kitchen table. So so there was community in that, and I think it is just another aspect of the military community. It's just one other thing that brings you closer together, and
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
there's ambassadorship in that. As military homeschooling families, when you live in some of these smaller communities, these missile communities, and we'd be in town at a playground or a park in the middle of what would be a public school day, people ask, "What why are you here? Why aren't the kids in school?" And so you become not just an ambassador for the base that you are living on, but also for the homeschooling community as well.
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's been amazing. So we have moved. I was, as you were trying to list some of the assignments you've had and the amount of times you've moved, and I was trying to remember, and now I can't remember, but I think it was between 16 and 20 moves over the course of the 34 years. We have 34 years, I say, of service. Obviously, my husband was the one that did the hardest work, right? But military families serve. And so I a lot of times you'll hear families or others will say, "Thank you for your service." And quite honestly, as a Gold Star spouse, your ultimate sacrifice. And so I was particularly honored to be able to interview you today because um, I know the difficulty of military life, and like I mentioned, my husband being a Navy chaplain, he always had 2 phones. Um, so yeah, and one was for the in the middle of the night calls and the things that, chaplains respond to. So, I'm just, thankful for your service, and I know I've lived it, and so I know when people that haven't lived it say thank you for your service, a lot of times, they mean it, but they don't have any understanding of the depth to what they're actually thanking us for. And our children and their experiences as well. So um yeah, the military life itself and then the homeschooling piece, it's an extra responsibility. But it's always in my experience, always was a blessing, and our children learned a whole lot about how resilient
Yeah.
they are. So, what were your thoughts with how your children? How were they with the military life and the adjustments and all their experience overall?
So I think how they would answer that question might actually be different from before Mike died and after he died. So before Mike died, the kids would always say, um, and still now, obviously very proud of their dad and very proud of what he did in his career, um, and as a father and as a husband.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
there was more of this almost hero worship, I think, but also as normal kids, sometimes they got tired of moving. They didn't wanna leave their friends one more time. They didn't want to have to be uprooted and be the new kid on the baseball team and be the new girl at the dance studio. Um, they were typical kids, and they were honest about that, and Mike and I always encouraged them to be honest about that, because the truth is they did not choose to be military kids.
Right.
Mike and I made that choice, and primarily Mike. He was already graduated from the academy when we got married. I knew what I was getting into, or at least I thought I did at 22,
Mhm.
right? So I think there was a lot of, "Yeah, this is really cool. This is what my dad does," and also, "Are you kidding me? We have to move one more time." So, both.
Mhm.
What they think of being military kids now, I think, is more complicated, actually. It's not a simple, "We're proud of our dad and we're tired of moving." I think there's a complexity of emotions that they have to deal with because they're Gold Star kids. They have lost their dad. He did not die in combat. However, he did die because of his military service. And I have had to have some very hard and deep conversations with the kids about the fact that Mike volunteered to deploy both times. He was not tagged like, "Hey, it's your turn." He volunteered both times. And so this realization that, why would he volunteer to go? Why were the burn pits there? Why could he come home safely when other people weren't? And we had this sense that we survived, we made it, and then to have this happen. And Mike's death was very sudden. I'm cautious how I describe his death because ultimately he died from cancer from the burn pits. However, the typical cancer story is not our story. Mike got a diagnosis on a Thursday and he died Friday morning. And he never missed work. He was not sick. So that also adds to the complexity for my kids. I think now they would tell you, very proud of their dad. They maybe see him more as another human being, not just their dad. Like, they can see the many facets of him. Um, Answering the question of why would he volunteer has given them a different side of their dad. Maybe something that they saw before, but now they're living with the consequences of who he was. And I keep telling them, "You should be really proud of your dad, and you should be proud that he was your dad. He is your dad, because he was a really honorable man."
Yes. Yes, I hear that. I have looked into and read your story, and um, that's what I got from it, and that's hard. That's really really hard. Um, how do you help children reconcile when family members maybe have made choices that they the children then connect to the loss?
I think it depends on the child.
Mhm.
And honestly, this this community has been solid even after Mike's death, and that has been helpful for my kids. There are classmates of his that still check up on me 3 years later. There are people who served under Mike that were the pilots, that were the young captains, the lieutenants, while he was the commanding officer, that still reach out to me to tell me stories about things Mike did for them when he was their commander or their DO, or they were serving with him in Afghanistan. And those stories and that connection to the military community has been a lifeline for me, but also for my kids to see that their dad actually did impact people.
Yes.
He might not be here, but the fact that people still tell us about Mike, he made an impact.
He made an impact, right?
Right. And so, depending on the child and where they are in their grief, those sort of things matter. And this is the part about the military community and the homeschooling community that people don't realize the impact. These are relationships that carry you through dark days.
Exactly. It's difficult. Um, I can imagine, like you said, he made it out of combat alive. Um, and I know what that, military families, we go through those experiences and then we start to look to retirement. And this is now going to be our time as a family. You can't really, you can't really get those years back, but you do begin to see a different life going forward. And combat is extremely difficult, not just for the service member, even for the service member who volunteers to serve and to go into combat. And it's difficult for the families back at home, praying and worrying and just trying not to listen to news, but listening to news and just all of the things that have happened. I know my husband served several times in combat, and trying to keep yourself busy and your kids busy, and homeschooling helps a lot because that definitely keeps most moms very busy. But you look forward to that time when they come back safely. You breathe such a deep sigh of relief. And then, like you said, in your retirement doesn't always look the way military families anticipated. From the service members who served and who then go on to pass as your husband did, to the wounded warriors who still are with us, but their life isn't what they anticipated it being, and the family and the reality of that. And I do some work with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and the Hidden Helpers, and how those are the children who help in the families where there are the wounded warriors and the veterans. And so I don't think, I mean, again, this is part of that. When someone says thank you for your service, this is the part that they don't get to really see. They don't live this part, the hard part, right? And the fact that most military families are serving because we believe in serving.
Right.
We believe in serving our country. And so I'm ever thankful again for Mike's service and for his, quite honestly, volunteering, because I know there are people that go and hope for the other way, that, they would not raise their hand and go into service. And I know there's others that have. And, I'm glad that you have the support that you have for the community, from the community that you are in. And part of that support has come from an organization, Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And as I was doing my research, and amazed that I had honestly not heard of it, and but I'm so amazed by this foundation and what it offers. And I just was poring over the website and just thinking, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. So let's talk a little bit about how you first learned about Tunnel to Towers, and what has that support meant to you and to your children.
Yeah. So, um, because we were living on Andrews Air Force Base on September 11th, Mike and I have always tried to pay attention to the organizations that have been out there to help the victims of 9/11, the families of fallen service members. So I knew Tunnel to Towers was out there. I did not know any recipients. That was not my world. We When Mike retired, we moved to rural Montana, small town Montana, and so there's not a big military community around us. So after Mike died, I actually had someone from the community reach out to me and say, "We think you should apply. We think you meet the requirements. We have been donors to Tunnel to Towers for a long time." And quite honestly, I was so overwhelmed. The PACT Act had not passed yet when Mike died, and so I had senators involved in my life, and again, it was a sudden death. So I was just trying to keep my head above water.
Right. Yes.
So a few months went by, and I finally decided to at least look and filled out their first form, and that started the process. And Tunnel to Towers came about from 9/11, from one of their family members dying the day the tunnels or the day the towers fell.
Mhm,
They walked
mhm.
me through the process. I qualified. Their mission is to pay off mortgages for family members who lose their hero due to September 11th. And because Mike died a service-related death, and because I'm still raising minor children, I qualified. So I went through their process. They held my hand through the whole thing. They have full transparency about what they're doing and how they wanna help you, and it has been an amazing experience, and not just the final effect of them paying off my mortgage and taking that financial burden off my plate, but also in that community in and of itself. That that also is another sort of family that I and my children have been pulled into.
Wow. Amazing.
So, they've done some amazing things. They honored Mike last year at their big gala, and I was able to go to their big fundraising gala in Times Square. They flew the kids and I out for their big 5K fundraising run in New York City, so we could participate in that with all the other Gold Star families. Um, they are available if I have questions or um, any anything like that that they can do to help us. They have kept us as now part of the Tunnel the Towers family, and I've been able to connect with other recipients and hear their stories as well.
Mm, that's amazing. So that's another community that you have to lean on and has enveloped you and your family with their care, support, and love. And the fact, again, that someone in small town, Montana, had been donating to Tunnel to Towers, was connected to you, someone you obviously knew who reached out and said, hey, apply. And what an amazing difference that it sounds like it has made. I looked the story up, like I said, on the website. I was reading, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, wow, what amazing!" And the story of the family member that the foundation was named, that experience of this young firefighter who put on his 60 pounds of gear and tried to make it through I believe it was obviously a tunnel. I can't remember the name of the tunnel, but it was Brooklyn Tunnel, maybe, was trying to get through, and it had been closed because of the tragedy, and decided, I'm going to run. I'm going to just leave my car and run and get to the towers to try to help, and lost his life there. And so that name, Tunnel to Towers Foundation, has been such an amazing support. And when you also mentioned something too, I wanted to bring in. You mentioned about the PACT Act, and I know the burn pit, and we know with military service, unfortunately, we have past history of medical challenges, such as like Agent Orange and those kinds of things. And so the burn pits and the PACT Act, I know that that's something that thankfully we are at the point where they recognized, and hopefully that can acknowledge the consequences and the results, of serving in combat in situations where those burn pits exist. And so, hopefully that will provide some relief to families, as much as anything can, you know. Um, yeah, hopefully that will help, definitely. Um, Homeschooling families who are such as yours, and um, not just military families, but others that are navigating loss. And any insights from your experience that you can share? And I know everyone experiences loss and grieves differently, but is there anything that you can share from your experience?
So I will say that being a homeschool family, as long as we have been, ended up being a blessing after losing Mike because we had gone through other hardships where we had adopted kids who didn't speak English. And so we kind of took a pause on schooling so we could bond as a family. And then we just picked it back up. I knew that there was space for my kids to grieve and have bad days and to still homeschool. So I did get some pushback after Mike died. Put the kids in school, take that off your plate. And it has not been easy. There have been many days where mom did not teach because mom was grieving. And so it probably took us a year, that first year. Um, we still schooled, but it was very sporadic. At that point, 3 of my kids had graduated. Number 3 had graduated a week after Mike died. And so I had 3 at home, and I I kept hearing Mike's voice in my head. He was always the one that when I was done, I'm tired of homeschooling. I just wanna be mom. I don't wanna teach anymore. He would always remind me of the reasons we kept doing it. And the truth is our family was stronger because of it, because we could flex. And so, in all honesty, we flexed. I I have 2 kids that will tell you, and I put this in air quotes, they graduated this May, um, but they haven't finished math. So, they're working full time and working on math at night, and would have that happened if Mike hadn't died? Probably not, but I also know that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, and my kids got to see a whole lot of real life. Life is messy, not just parents deploying or moving 19 times or adopting international kids or mom getting sick, whatever those things are. They also got to realize that mom's a mess, but she's getting better. And so this last week was actually a good example of that. September 11th, the anniversary comes along. Um, I had a very griefy day. That's what I call them, the very griefy days.
Right.
And I was sitting at the computer crying while I was ordering them Domino's. One of the kids walks in and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I was able to just say, "Missing your dad. I'm okay." She's like, "Okay. Would you order this kind of pizza for me?" So,
Right.
but, we chuckle, but that's real life, and
Yeah. That's real
they've been
life,
able to
right?
see that and experience that, and
Yes.
so I would tell people when you go through hardship, that isn't that isn't the sign you should stop homeschooling, but maybe it's the sign that you can actually teach your kids something different, something about being resilient, something
Mm.
about
Mhm.
being part of a family or a community, whether it's a military community or the homeschooling community or your church community, or I'm now a Gold Star wife, right? A Gold Star spouse. So I I have been involved with Tunnel to Towers and the Gary Sinise Foundation and Never Alone Widows and these other organizations that give you another community to be a member of. And so my kids have seen other organizations that acknowledge what their dad did and that he died and that it wasn't for nothing, that we are not invisible. They have been able to sit at the kitchen table in the middle of the afternoon and have a really hard conversation that has nothing to do with math or grammar. Um, our history lessons look a little bit different maybe than a public school history lesson because our lives were directed by what's now history. Um, so that would be my encouragement actually is even in hardship, you can still homeschool your kids. And you might need to pull in other people. I've had other people help teach my kids, and that's okay too. The community will step in. You will find people, maybe they have nothing to do with the homeschooling community, but they love Latin. So they're going to step in and be a Latin teacher because they taught at the private school down the street. Or maybe you're going to have the retired orthopedic surgeon who's gonna step in and teach science, which that is a personal experience of mine. I have a friend who's a retired '06 in the Army. She deployed multiple times, and she tutored my kids all through chemistry because my kid died and I did not have the bandwidth. So, there are other means to school your kids even in the middle of hardship.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, you know, I know we homeschool and academics is important. We want to educate our children, but it's more than that. It's how do you raise resilient kids? How do you raise kids who um, know who they are and know that they have the ability to get through hard times? I mean, how do you help them? You know, I think homeschooling allows us to do so much of life together outside of the academics and navigating it and learning the skills, the character skills, all the survival skills, the grieving skills, and still see like we got through it.
Yes.
And to see be able like for your daughter to say, you know, are you okay? And know that when you said amidst crying that I'm just thinking about your dad. And she knew you were going to be okay, that it was all right that you were grieving. And she had become not desensitized to it, but understanding and empathetic and knowing that that's okay that mom's crying, that she's thinking about dad. And she knew it to the degree that she was able, instead to say, oh gosh, you know, are you really going to be okay? Oh, you know, to join in, she was able to move through that whole process of intimate knowledge that mom's going to be okay, that she's grieving and it's fine. To still say, hey, can you order, you know,
Right.
a type, you know, the pizza she wanted, and knew that you were okay to say, yes, I heard you amidst my grief. And I just feel as if homeschooling allows us to grow those bonds, even through hard times as well as good times, to come out on the other side with amazing kids who really are very, very resilient and who understand life and walk through life together, you know, with you as a parent. And so, and that's what I was hearing from as you were sharing that, and being able to know how important community is so that they can be part of community for someone else.
Yeah, I would say there's a few things in there. Mike served, and we always wanted our kids to have a servant heart, to serve the people around you, however that looks. Um, whether it's my son helping me with all the tech so I could sound all great today, um, or whether it's the 15-year-old who is helping at church on Sunday afternoons with games at Awana, um, whether it's being kind to the person who's irritating you with their groceries because 'cause they're not getting them on the conveyor belt fast enough. right? But all those moments are serving moments, and that's what Mike did in spades. He served our family, he served his community, he served his country. Um, he always said the reason he volunteered to go was because if he didn't go, somebody else would have to, and he knew we would be okay, and it's why he trained the way he trained. That that is why he volunteered to go, and I've really made sure my kids knew that in the middle of the questions of grief, would dad have volunteered to go if he would have known what the future held? And the answer is yes. And I know that to my core that the answer is yes. I also, you know, resiliency and being part of a community and academics, they all play a part in homeschooling. I have kids that are married with their master's degree and they had scholarships all the way through. I have other kids that did community college. I have 2 that aren't sure they even want to go to college. My 15-year-old wants to be a farrier, so she wants to go to trade school. There is there's room for all of those things within homeschooling, whether it's the kid who absolutely hates academics and they just want you to hurry up and count the credits and be done, that's okay. Also, the kid who has aspirations for graduate school or maybe becoming a professor themselves someday and getting that PhD, there's also room for those highly academic kids. And that's the beautiful thing. We can tailor it to that while we are giving them other skills as well. That resiliency, that community, um, that depth, I guess is how I would say it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree totally. I totally agree. So, well, this has been amazing conversation, and I'm just so honored to meet you, and you know, thank you for your service, and thank you for Mike's service. Thank you for your children's service. Our country thanks you, and it's been a hard conversation, but it's been a necessary conversation, and it's been such an enlightening conversation. So I'm thankful for that, and I know that our listeners and that will be thankful to learn of your story. And the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is an amazing resource. So if you are listening later and you are interested in the foundation, definitely take a look at their website, Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends. And if you would like to get upcoming podcast episodes delivered right to your inbox, sign up for our Homeschool Talks email list. And if you are a Gold Star homeschooling family that could be assisted by a curriculum grant, please contact our Compassion Grant Department to apply. And finally, if you're not yet a member of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, we would love for you to join us. Please go to homeschooltalks.com/join. Thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to have met you, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Every week, HSLDA hears from hundreds of homeschool families, many of whom are facing hostility from school officials or discrimination from colleges and employers. We've helped single parents facing criminal charges for homeschooling their children, families traumatized by wrongful CPS investigations, and even a grandmother harassed by the state for homeschooling her granddaughter. By donating to HSLDA, you can help make homeschooling possible for families like these and enable our work to preserve freedom for future generations. Give today at hslda.org/donate. That's hslda.org/donate. Thanks for listening to this episode of Homeschool Talks. If you've enjoyed this conversation, will you do us a favor by sharing it with a friend or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts? As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes, as well as upcoming guests and topics, you can sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. That's all for now. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll see you next time.